Thank you very much. It obviously is a special privilege for me to speak to all of you, my fellow members of Kendal. And I feel very strongly I'm speaking not only kind of from the outside as a psychiatrist for whom a good portion of my practice is dealing with elderly people, but also from the inside. I am one of the elderly myself, and there's not an issue that I'm speaking about here which in a general way I am not contending with as well as you. So to an extent we're coming from the same place, and obviously my heart and my emotions are in this as well. There's several things that I would like you to get from this talk. And I'm going to tell you what they are to begin with, rather than waiting until the end. First of all, most of the issues of mental, cognitive, emotional health in the elderly concern feelings of potential or actual helplessness. When we are feeling unable to manage something, whatever it may be, that is the beginning of what I would say is apt to be an issue in this realm. It follows, and this is more the point, that those things which we can do to prevent helplessness and those things that we can do to react helpfully in the presence of helplessness are the things that we are seeking to do to assure our continued health in this realm. The next next point I want to make and have you take from this presentation is that change is always possible. And not only change in a downhill direction, but change in a positive direction. And sometimes that is with others' help, and sometimes it is not. So a sub-theme of this is our readiness to accept and to utilize help when it is useful for us in the sustaining of our feelings of competence and our feelings of a lack of helplessness. A third issue, which I'm not going to explain and kind of save for the end, so at least there's a little bit of a question about what I'm going to talk about today, is what I call the reserve hypothesis. And it concerns a particular aspect of being older that I hope you take away from this as a useful idea. I'm also going to make a recommendation, which I'll also do at the beginning rather than the end. And this is a book. The title of this book is also the theme of this talk. Treat Me, Not My Age. So that in many of us and in many of the professionals with whom we deal, there is a tendency to say, well, he's old, therefore that's the way it's got to be. I want to do everything in my power to help you to counteract that feeling in yourself, and this book contains many ideas to help you to help your caretakers to avoid that attitude towards you, and in particular your medical advisors. Okay? This book is written by Mark Lachs, L-A-C-H-S, and if you can't remember that or don't write it down, that's fine. Just ask Dave. I would also suggest that the staff read this book because this is very relevant to the many issues that we confront. Okay. I'm going to tell you right off, you've done something terrific already to help yourself about helplessness. What have you done? I'll show you. You've joined Kendal at Home. I can't think of any one thing that all of us could have done, and I personally feel this very deeply myself, to counteract feelings of actual or potential helplessness than to join an organization which clearly has in mind our well-being, where we have available to us non-family members, not that family members aren't also important, but non-family members to help us in time of need and to help us make those decisions that are so difficult when things get tough. They can find us resources, they can find us help, they can help guide us, they can answer our questions, they can assist us in times when we can't think things so well through for ourselves. So that is number one. There is no one thing that you could have done to better help yourself in this regard. So already you're way, way ahead of the game, as I say on the bottom, congratulations, you made a very good choice. Now, the next issue, in order to preserve your mental health, is to preserve your physical health. After joining Kendal, there is no one thing you can do to help yourself mentally more important than the preservation of your physical health. So, this means getting a good geriatric doc to help. And this book that I mentioned goes into detail about how one seeks to do that. You want someone who's going to be able to hear your questions, who will be able to recognize the differences between elderly and younger adult people, who will have a knowledge about the differences in medication and so on. I could list many things that are a part of this. So, very important. Find a physician who you feel comfortable with and who will respond adequately to your questions. Next, and this is the part of Kendal at Home, but I'm emphasizing it, make your home a safe place to be. A safe place for a 45-year-old is not necessarily a safe place for a 65-year-old or a 75 or an 85-year-old. And I have included on this slide a website that is particularly helpful, in addition to the help that Kendal gives us, in understanding and in detailing those things we can do to our homes to make ourselves physically safe. We have to be comfortable in where we live. If we live in a place that has dangers, if we're constantly afraid of falling down, if we have injured ourselves in a fall, we become more tense and we feel less at home in our own home. So look at this website sometime. It's a little course in recognizing the issues in the home environment that tend towards physical issues. Okay. Next, now we're going to move into kind of the more mundane part of this talk. Population in the United States, as you know, is largely and becoming more elderly. 65 and older, 15% of the population. This was a few years ago. 85 years and older is the fastest growing segment of the population. And 20% of those 55 and older have mild or more severe, some degree of mental disorder. Now, when I'm saying that, I am implying flexibility, possibility of change. I'm not saying that's a fixed number. I'm saying that that's something that is a guide, that this is a significant issue for most of us.
What's the number for people less than 55?
Probably 35% of those. There are advantages to our age in this regard. Okay, these are expected changes with aging. No one's going to stand up here and tell you that everything is just the same when you get older. They'd be a fool to do that. So what are expected changes? It doesn't say the degree to which this is true, but all of us have memory changes in both short-term memory and working memory, which are very close to the same idea. Working memory is like when you go look up the telephone number and you go from the telephone book to the telephone, you can't remember what the heck it was, right? Which happens to me frequently. I was on my way over here today. I lived in Shaker Heights. I had to go to the gas station to get gas in my car. And I was just trying to notice all the little things I do that represent some of these issues that everybody has. I couldn't find my car. I couldn't find my wallet to begin with. So I had to go. I have certain places I put it, and I found it in one of them. So I have my car keys. I hang them on little hooks on the wall next to the door. I keep 3 sets of car keys, so in case 2 are missing, there's always 1 extra left over. All right? I'm sure all of you kind of do stuff like this, but these are the kind of things that help us not to feel helpless. Right? Spatial orientation. We don't move as well in space as we used to. It isn't just a matter of balance, but it's a sort of, that kind of hesitation we all have when we move about. We're not quite sure exactly where we are in space. And that is, you can modify that. When I go hiking now, I always carry my hiking sticks. All right? The things in both hands. Because my balance isn't as good and because I just vary issue. And there are similar things we do in the home. We obviously, most of us go up and down steps hanging onto the rail now. We didn't used to do that, did we? I mean, these are the things that we do in order to counteract, and this is an inevitable aspect. Finally, there are aspects of executive functioning, which is a fancy term for issues like organization, judgment, and decision-making. I think we're all, I like to think this, and I'm rationalizing, let me know. I think we all can do as well at these things usually, or most of us, but it takes us longer. We have to spend a little more time with it. We're not as good at multitasking as we were once. We can't easily think of 3 things at once and kind of do them in order. So taking our time, being patient, being tolerant of ourselves, being kind to ourselves, and I would say being kind to our spouses and those in our environment who have similar issues. Among couples, at least in my experience, that often there is an impatience that the other person and a dislike of seeing one's spouse begin to lose capacity. So irritation with each other begins to rise in some instances. All of us should take a moment with that, and mutual kindness and generosity is the essence of doing well at this point in life. Okay, so now we're moving progressively. We're digging deeper into issues and negative things, and I apologize for that, but here we go. This is, I'm sure you've heard of mild cognitive impairment. It's in the newspapers, and it's a kind of an ill-defined term, but it indicates a degree of cognitive impairment that exceeds that which was reflected in what I had on the last slide, but is not, this is not dementia. This is not reaching a point where a person is incapable of managing their daily lives. There may be some area where there's trouble. Let's say that spatial orientation issue becomes greater. This is one of the things about driving an automobile. One of the hardest things, obviously, and a point that most of us feel terribly helpless about if the issue comes up about not driving, because most of us count on that as a means of getting around. But there comes points in life, in my life, in yours, when that will have to be considered. And I think we can feel comfortable and happy that in our communities there is increasing availability of senior transportation. I heard from one of our members yesterday about Cleveland Heights has not only a very active senior center where we can get together and share experiences and activities, but there is a transport to that center available to those who cannot drive. And I think many communities have similar facilities available to them. This mild cognitive impairment is, I check for it by doing a kind of cognitive testing, which is a little bit more than what Kendal, I think, usually does. I'm not sure. But I think it's an important issue. I think it's something that should be checked for either by your regular physician or through Kendal or at some point. One of my themes, again, it's good to know where you are on this spectrum. Worrying about it is not going to help you at all. Getting a clear idea about it is going to help. Okay, so there's mild cognitive impairment. I got to look at the things here. I used to be able to just kind of remember what was coming next. Okay, so